Très bien, écoutez, bonsoir. Oui, je vais essayer de vous restituer.
Good evening. I'm going to try and talk to you about the social footprint, but what I'm interested in as a person in charge of companies is what are the strengths of companies? How are they going to use positive economy to develop their activities in this context where an economic environment is in a difficult situation? And I think tonight there will be discussion around this with Henry Lachman. So what are we trying to do? Since 2009, we have been working on this with about 10 company presidents to try and define what this means. What is the social footprint of a company on a long-term basis, not on the short term? We published a book in 2011 on this, and we tried to present a certain number of reading matrices. These different matrices. Arnaud Ventura was here. He worked on this too, and others. Tonight you'll have Françoise Gris. She was also part of those who helped us work on this. And what we felt was interesting here was to work on this matrix to read all of this. We worked with the CSA Institute and interviewed some 100 company chairmen to see whether they implemented this, if it gave extra value to the companies, what are the triggering factors that would allow them to go further, even in a situation of crisis, and what they would need to be able to work better around these concepts of economy. But then to be concrete, let me start with this. It's the first time I use it, but let me explain this.
These companies are there to grow and of course to be fruitful, and we say that with the comparison with the tree, that this company has to be well anchored. This company should be deep rooted in the economy environment, and so it's you have three components, three dimensions. If the economic dimension is too small, this company cannot grow in the long term. So the balance, the anchorage, with these three components, the social, economic, and environmental dimensions are essential for a long-term business. But if this company does not take care of those three dimensions, in the long term, this company will not be able to grow either. If we take very simple examples, let's take current case. Problems of liquidity in banks, difficulties for companies to get credits. The company cannot refinance its activities and might disappear. The same applies to the environment. If we had a huge chemical or nuclear pollution close to this room, we will not be here to discuss. And in the social field, it is exactly the same. A company cannot grow if the social dimension is not well nourished. Jean-Paul Fitoussi said, well, we wanted to maximize the development of GDP, but it was maybe to the detriment of stable employment. That's a good illustration, but in the long term, we made a mistake because the stability of jobs contributes to GDP. So we need to take into account the three dimensions: the social dimension, environmental and economic dimensions and here there's an additional component not represented here on this drawing. This earth around the tree is not only important for the tree, but it is important for the ecosystem and for the companies surrounding the first company. So, what is this social footprint? This is the impact of social policies of the company on its employees, on the partners, subcontractors or co-contractors, and on society. That's what we try and assess, this social footprint. Is social footprint at the heart of the strategies of companies? Well, here are some good news. If we compare this over 3 years, we had 26% 3 years ago, and now it's almost 50% of companies perceiving this social footprint. It's at the core of priorities, and social footprint is a strategic and sustainable dimension. Why is it important? It's not a series of programs we're going to give up because of economic turmoils, or but it's a strategic program. You do not cut those expenditures because it is part of the strategy, even during a crisis. Does it contribute to the performance of the company? Does this social footprint contribute to the performance of the company? This question is often asked. Some good news as well. 96% of managers of CEO of companies, chairman and CEOs, 96% of them consider that it is good for the performance of the company. It contributes to it with some room for maneuver and progress. The 54% should. We should improve the results and the percentage as well. For instance, the 42%. So, the social footprint, does it contribute to the performance of the company? Well, the managers said that it was important for the social dialogue, social cohesion, engagement of employers, talent retention. So you see that it is self-centered, rather. It is an inward-looking approach. And through those surveys, we see two differentiated approaches. We see, on the one hand, people doing a social footprint, making out of this footprint a corporate strategy. There is a strong belief of those managers. It is part of their identity and part of the culture of the company. And there is an awareness. They know that they have to take care of this earth around the tree. I will, and then maybe the feeling. The company becomes a reference in a world losing its references. So that's one side. And then on the other side, you have people doing social footprints because they are pragmatic. It might improve the image of the company. If you do social footprint, it may be contemplated as an added value, but they do not have the whole spectrum of the social footprint, external and internal footprint. They rather work on the external footprint to improve their communication, but there is no strong belief. So two approaches. Let's look at the domains where companies may act to optimize this social footprint. We have presented here two parts. The performance of the company is in the center with the internal footprint and the external footprint. So we're going to talk about sharing of created value, anticipation of transformations, employability. Employability is a simple concept. A company can no longer promise that they are going to hire you for life, but the employability of the colleagues inside the company or outside the company in the long-term prospect. If you get rid of an employee, provided that this employee has an employability level such that he can find another job outside the company, okay, that's part of the social footprint. It is part of an externality which is considered as being positive. Anticipation of transformation. transformations. Here again, the examples we had as we worked together, Philippe Carlier was the president of Siemens, and he had to close down an incandescent bulb factory. It was a decision, it was a European law forbidding the production of such bulbs, light bulbs in Europe, and move to other types of light bulbs with LEDs. So they had time in that case to work over 2 years to anticipate on those changes. They put together all stakeholders to either rescue this plant or rescue some of jobs or create external employability. So they succeeded to rescue their plant. They kept on producing very low consumption light bulbs, although the whole market was dominated by Koreans and Chinese, but it implied a complete, full and broad dialogue with the economic partners, with the industrial relations with the regional partners to find out a series of solutions. This is what I call anticipation of transformations, having an impact on employability, because one conclusion is to say that when we anticipate on transformations to train people throughout their career, to say improve employability becomes a prerequisite. Anticipate means train beforehand and dedicate a part of the training budget throughout the year to specific training courses to improve employability. Sharing the created value. The social dialogue has, of course, to take place. Maybe we could have a social dialogue on the basis of a territory in order to have a link as well with the external footprint. So let's look at the external social footprint. We're going to work on the development of expertise and skills, but for the performance of the company, balanced commercial relations, and in the exchanges we had with the CEOs of companies. One example, some companies ask their subcontractors or partners working with them in the case of invitation to tenders. They ask to be involved in this approach. So we may wonder whether those partners decided to join this approach because they wanted to. But never mind. What matters is that those companies are able to work on that particular topic at one point in time. And once they are interested in the topic, in 90% of the cases, not only those companies continue, but they broaden the spectrum of interest on the component of the external social footprint, and then they move on to the internal footprint. Two comments here. A company cannot be performing on all those criteria at a point in time. That's the first comment. Second comment, given the business model and the industry a company is, a company cannot cover the whole spectrum and cannot have the same objectives in terms of social footprint. With Jean-Pierre Clamadieu, the president of Rhodia, and who became the president of chairman and CEO of Solvay, who took part in our works. When we compared our companies, it was absolutely impossible to have the same social footprint because industries, business models were completely different. What really matters is to be indeed exemplary and efficient and good from a social footprint, and to have a complementarity of social footprint between companies and between the public domain. That's the objective. And as Carole Bouquet said this morning, what really matters is to enter through your expertise, to grow this field of expertise, and then step by step to open up and use the other tools. Accenture is a company, 5,000 people, 32 years of age. On average, we recruit a lot of students each year. Our field of expertise was we are able to recruit young people, to take them in a company, to train them to work on their employability, because we are a global company. They are employable. We upgrade their skills step by step. This is the internal footprint. How can I work on this external social footprint? For me, it was simple. I am the chairman of the governing board of Excellion. We are excellent in recruiting young people, in training them, in supporting them during the first year of their career. It was important for us to understand how the ecosystem could give us those young recruits, what was the problem of the schools, and to understand the problems of the top engineering schools, to understand their needs and their constraints and our needs and constraints. That's what we mean by take care of this compost. I have to take into account not only the young people, but the school training the young people, given the developments and the problems. And this is true not only for engineering schools, but it is true as well when you have trainees. And how can I take care not only of the tree, but also the earth, the compost around the tree, in order to help companies grow in their field of expertise. Our field of expertise, the youth. Other companies might be excellent for senior people. A company might be excellent for the youth and not as good for the senior, but because of the complementarity of a territory, we can find solutions. The problem is not the problem is that there are injunctions from the government. Everyone should have the same criteria, and this is counterproductive from a social dialogue point of view and from the point of view of the efficiency on a territory. Fine. What are the triggering effects or factors? In order to set up a positive economy and a sustainable economy, we saw three factors. First, the belief of the manager. Nothing can be done if the manager is not completely convinced of that. Number two, that's the gradual engagement of employees. And number three, the agreement of shareholders, the involvement of shareholders. And those three factors allow to develop those social footprint concepts. And you see that the measurement and the indicators are below. So managers, engagement of employees, and the approval of shareholders. How can we speed up, of course? How can we speed up the process and go farther than just the belief? Managers ask economic surveys and benchmarks. They want to have a platform to help to exchange information, share their practices and experiences. And with Arnaud, we said we will try and find new ideas. So go even further for these platforms of. And it's always reassuring to say, if I do this in the social field, how much money is it going to give me back? Because I can say that to my shareholders. No, that's not my driver. My driver is simple. If I work, if I have a long-term social footprint, if I do a positive economy, I will have more opportunities than others to have a long-term benefit. Which company shall I leave to my successor? It would be a company in a better state. So to make sure that the company is growing, if I'm French, for instance, if my company grows on the French territory, or if it's a global company, if my company grow globally. So we work with Passeport Avenir, here again to take care of this social compost. Not for us, but for the society. We bring young people facing difficulties, and we bring those young to special schools. So there's a methodology of assessment to reassure everyone. So we took the methodology of the business school called ESSEC, and to see the return on investment in terms of social capital. And the ratio, €1 invested would, the return would be 2.1 from a social point of view. Those indicators will be set up progressively so that you have benchmarks and you can speed up the setting up of this. In which framework do we want or in which context do we want to do that? Well, I already answered that point. Are we going to have self-regulation, or are we going to resort to a mixed or combined approach? Well, 46% say we would like to have a kind of self-regulation. This is the French schizophrenia. Yes, you have to produce reports. Yes, you have to carry out surveys and reports. We need them for benchmarking, but careful indicators means sanctions. Maybe we have already too many sanctions within a company. What shall we do? And 47% say we will need to have a combined approach. So we need those benchmarks. We need those a basis for comparison to make progress. But once again, the driver today is, before all, the positioning, a clear positioning, and over a long period of time, and a stance clearly expressed by the management. So, Alexandra, this is what I wanted to share with you this afternoon.
Merci.